What's up, beautiful people? This is Pope with Stock Doctor Trading. And I've been spending a couple of days on this research project here, and I decided I just had to make a video because it's going on too long. All right, little backstory. As I walk into this weekend, I'm thinking, all right, what kind of content would I like to make? Let's try to do something that could be like a series that we do every weekend while we're waiting for the market to reopen. And what I've always found is that's a really good time for the media to spin the narrative, especially on a 3-day weekend. So I was really looking for different news reports. What was their narrative and why did they have that narrative? I think it's kind of nice to go in and get some backstory on some things. So I gathered up like 4 or 5 that kind of raised my bullshit alarm. And I was like, all right, let's start like going down the rabbit hole, looking into these. Like now, 2 days later, I already have like gone deep into the first one that caught my eye, and I'm realizing I'm not going to be able to do a weekend report until I at least get this format down and at least try to run through one with you guys. All right, so maybe the production won't be perfect. I have a couple ways I'd like to spin this in the future, but for now, what I might be calling this is the Weekend Financial Spin Span Report, numero uno. And what it just means is we're just going to watch out for the narrative in this financial spin and how they tend to spam us with that on the weekends. I found this one was the one that caught my eye first. It might not even be the best one, but I spent so much time going down the rabbit hole of this, and I was trying to like form and formulate how I would express this narrative. It just got to be too much. I'm going to show you what I found, show you how I found it, why I was looking at it the way I was. And first, what we're going to do is we'll just start off by watching the video. All right, so let's just get into it right now. Here we go.
And Mike Sommers, president of the American Petroleum Institute. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate your time very much today. I know you're busy. Your industry is under attack. Can I start for my benefit, but also the benefit of our viewers? The refinery situation, as I understand it, restrictive environmental policies have closed refineries or diverted fuel away from refineries. Why don't you tell us?
He already knows what he's about to say. He already knows all the questions.
I don't think Mr. Biden's attack on refineries is suggested by the facts.
Well, first of all, your viewers need to know that American refineries are the most technologically advanced refineries in the world. And right now, American refineries are running at about 94% capacity, which is the highest level they have ever run. At the same time, because of the COVID pandemic and because of environmental regulations and incentives from the federal government, there have been 11 refineries that have shut down just in the last 2 years. And what that has meant is that there's about 1 million barrels fewer of capacity happening in the United States in terms of the production of gasoline and diesel. What that has meant is that, at this point, we really need to develop more refineries in this country. Valero, one of the biggest refineries in the United States, and ExxonMobil are actually right now expanding refineries in Texas. Both of them are going to put about 300,000 new barrels of refining capacity on the market. So we're excited to get those on as quickly as possible because we need it. But unfortunately, we have a lot of these environmental regulations and incentives from the federal government have meant that about 1/3 of the 11 refineries that have shut down because of those environmental regulations and because of incentives for them to switch from refining fuel to refining other feedstocks.
Petroleum refining in the United States, we were at in 2013, we were at almost 19 million barrels a day. We were doing this because in 2008, our market crashed, and the only real way that we could strengthen our economy was by flooding the market with oil, therefore drawing down the GDP of all the other countries that make money off oil. And it's essentially just a tactic for economic warfare. So we flooded the market with oil for years and refineries within our borders that could do it. We have 135 of them. He's talking about 11 having been shut down, and we're going to go into why they shut down, but it wasn't an attack from environmental regulations that did so. It's just supply and demand and an economic situation that's going on with with a dwindling commodity in terms of its recoverability. All right, let's get back to this cat.
Other feedstocks being what? Ethanol, diesel? How do you define other feedstocks?
Other feedstocks could include cooking oil, for example. So 2 of those refineries are on the West Coast. And those 2 refineries, because of an incentive program called a low carbon fuel standard.
So wait, were they shut down, or did they just retool and start producing some other type of oil? And if we take a look here, you can actually see it probably be beneficial for the U.S. to start manufacturing more of its own feedstocks in the vegetable oil, food oil industries. This is a chart where you can see maxed out since we have the data from 1990. We're at an all-time high in terms of importing cooking oil. So could it be that those 2 had incentives in order to bring manufacturing back in? Because you'll see right here, let's see, we're trying to, so China was the second largest country that we actually imported our oil from. And could it be that we're trying to get off our dependence of cooking oils? And could it be that these refineries, for these 2 in California, these refineries were over 30 years old each. And because of that, they needed to be retooled anyway. So what they decided was that the amount of supply and the cost for the oil to be refined was getting too high. This is because the fracking oil that's coming in takes a lot more extraction process in order to refine it and get the sulfur out. And it has a lot of other stuff in there that contaminates the sulfur. So the sulfur used to be like a secondary commodity for a refinery. As they refine oil, they get sulfur. That was like they could sell the sulfur on the market too, make about $1 billion off that if they're lucky, depending on how much they produce. So right away, we already see a dynamic. This guy's, a couple minutes in and we see he's got a narrative. He's got a political agenda. He was politically driven for many, many years. He wants to get more oil produced. And why does he want to do that? Because it's at its highest prices right now. So he's like, let's sell as much of this as we can. And he's trying to create a narrative. But I think the narrative is going to go a lot deeper. I mean, because what he's trying to do is saying we're at a lack of refineries. Could that mean that either he wants to build more or sell the ones that he already has? Well, I'm not sure. Let's get back to it, though.
In the state of California have switched their feedstock from crude oil to other kinds of products. And what that has meant is that doesn't mean you're replacing one barrel of oil being refined with 1 barrel of cooking oil being refined. Those refineries are actually producing only 10% of what they previously produced. And that's because of a perverse...
Because it doesn't cost as much to produce that much. And it's a different type of extraction process. And it's completely different other calculation for their margins.
Incentive that is in place in the state of California. What the Biden administration wants to do is they want to take that failed California policy and make it national. And that would be a disaster.
Okay, so he's saying that the whole reason for this bump up, and I'm telling you, there's an alternative method for this. I think they're trying to sell some refineries. That's what I think, because he's trying to say that Biden's attacking American energy. There's no attack happening. Something happened in California. He doesn't like it. He thinks Biden's going to get this thing done. Congress doesn't pass any laws anymore. They're not getting anything done. So none of this is really going to happen. He's just attacking the fact that it might. And I bet you there's another reason why. I bet you there's another reason why. I mean, obviously, the political attack is beneficial for him for other reasons, lobbying, rallying representatives and senators. But okay, all right, let's keep going. Too juicy.
For the American
Walk me through just briefly, Mike. This is so important stuff. Quote unquote, the perverse incentive in California, which Biden might want to take nationwide. What is that perverse incentive?
So they basically give you a tax credit if you refine these other
that's
kinds
perverted
of products.
Got it.
Those products
disgusting.
are not economic to refine right now were it not for that tax incentive.
Yeah, that's how it is when you have to bring manufacturing back in from China, because China can make everything cheaper than us. So if you do want to bring manufacturing back to the United States, you're going to have to provide incentives to do so, because the dollar is very high. That's why imports are high. And that's why other people can beat our prices, is because it's easier for them to make it in their country, sell it to us at our high dollar price, and they make a lot more of a margin for that. So if you want to bring manufacturing back, you're going to have to offer tax incentives. I'm not standing up for any political side here, but this is like how you really, really manipulate a narrative. Is you break this stuff down, and you play on the heartstrings of what people already disagree with, whether or not you're red or blue or whatever.
So to comply with the new standards in the state of California, a number of these companies have changed how those refineries are tooled. And that has led to less production of those products in the state of California. And that's one of the big problems that we're having right now in terms of this fuel supply.
So, Max Summers, if I were worried about $5 a gallon gasoline.
Is that one of the problems you're having with the fuel suppliers? It could be that there's an overall, I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, they use little words like, that's one of the reasons. Yeah, it's one of the 20 other reasons that might be why this is happening, due to supply chain crunches and a lack of viable, recoverable oil that's not just fracking sludge. All right, so let's get further along, and we're going to do a little bit more of a deeper dive. I'm not sure how deep I can get in this video, because I just kept going and going and going. It just keeps going. There's nothing more to say.
I would want to put more gasoline on the market. I would want to oversupply, not undersupply. Listening to you, they're providing incentives and environmental rules that are stopping that. We're still short of gasoline. We're short of refineries.
All right,
and
we already clarified.
They're saying don't bother with gasoline. Do this.
They're not doing that yet.
Fuels.
They're just talking about it.
This is the part I don't get. I'm not sure people understand this clearly.
I don't think you understand it clearly.
What they've basically done is they're trying to put in place a system where they would put incentives in place to switch, which are actually making the problem much, much worse in terms of the supply that we have. A.P.I. actually put out just this week a plan that would address consumer costs at the pump and ensure that we're energy independent again. And we put that out, and you can find it at api.org. It's called our 10 in 22 plan.
So new EPA related rules.
And we will be putting that in front of your local congressman. No matter what you vote for, they're going to be seeing our 10 and 80-22 plan very soon, because we pay them.
Basically have shut down a couple refineries in the past year or two. Is that the idea?
Yeah, unfortunately, these new regulatory efforts, which they're really doubling down on, and then new tax incentives, which they're trying to take nationwide, have really made this system completely untenable.
There is 135 refineries in the world. That 2 of them have been shut down to this. And even if I didn't just break down why they would have incentive to change, because they had to retool anyway, this thing hasn't happened, people. Oh my God, this is just one of the many shill reports this weekend. We got to get through this, because there's more.
And how many new pipelines have been permitted and built in the last 2 years?
Well, unfortunately,
now we're talking about pipelines.
That is another place where this administration has continued to really put their foot on the throat of American production. They've figured out that the best way to cut down on American production is
Did he just George Floyd reference the fucking oil industry? You fucking dirtbag.
Really putting their foot on the hose in the middle of where the production happens and where the products are actually refined. And that's the pipeline system in the United States. As you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pipelines already in this country, but at the same time, we need more pipeline capacity, because the production in the United States continues to grow. In fact, just this month, the United States hit again.
We'll go back to it right here. Production is only growing from being very highly down. In 2013, we were doing 19 million barrels. You see it right there. So it's not continuing to increase. It just dived off, and they're coming back.
that magic 12 million barrels of oil produced in the United States every single day. Pre-pandemic, we were at 13 million. Mm-hmm. We're on our way back up to that number, and we're going to need it for decades and decades to come.
If it's permitted. If it's permitted, that's
exactly
my biggest concern. I remember Energy Department, the Energy Information Administration, back in 2019 suggested that over the next couple of years we'd be at 15 million barrels a day. We're still a million barrels short of where we were pre-pandemic, and the trend line, here.
No, we're still short an additional 4 on top of your 1, so 5 from what we could do in 2013. Now, I'll add these links in. The reason why I hinted on this earlier is that we tried to create an economic war over the price of oil. We succeeded at it. We drove the price down, but was only a limited amount of time that we were going to be able to do that because fracking oil just is frankly more expensive to produce. It's more expensive to refine, and that's where we were getting our oil. So we went from not being a major oil exporter. We actually had a law against exporting oil. And we found a loophole. The law still exists, but we found a loophole around that where we became one of the world's largest exporters of oil so that we could flood the market, get away from the OPEC umbrella that held that supply and demand chain and bring down some other, other countries' GDP for a little while. And that's why we can't be like pulling up the tiny bow and bringing tears of sadness for the oil industry that is somehow finding this to be competitive when I really actually think they're just trying to sell used, old, beat-up refineries that need to have 20 years in order to ever turn a profit ever again. Let's keep this going.
In 2022, we should be at least 14 million barrels a day. So I'm just saying, Mike Sommers, we are undersupplied oil, but we're undersupplied gasoline as well. And let me just add, it sounds like we're undersupplied refineries, and it kind of sounds like the incentives are all wrong to solve this. Give you the last word.
Well, you're right. In fact, unfortunately, Secretary Granholm went on one of your rival networks here just this week, basically said that we need to produce more today, but we don't want any more production 5 to 10 years from now. As you and I both know, it costs billions to build these sophisticated refineries. Who's going to make that investment if the federal government is saying that we don't want that production 5 to 10 years from now? It's really unfathomable what they're doing.
There may not be a fossil fuel industry if you leave it up to the current administration. You're exactly right. The only quibble I have with you is we have no rival networks.
Yeah, you do. Stock Doctor Trading. All right. So, we're still recording. Good. I got to keep that check. I recorded this twice already. All right. So, that guy's obviously shilling for big oil. So let's really try to uncover why are they shilling this refinery thing? Why they need more pipelines? Why are they trying to sell these refineries on us? So I kept Googling. All right, so let's see. Let's get us over to, following, like the Texas rep Lizzie Fletcher, who had the most contributions from American Investment Council, the lobbyist firm that Mr. Sommers worked for. And so I found her Wikipedia, not too much there. She's a typical House, so there wasn't anything that stood out there. I noticed that on the 15th, the A.P.I. had released a sort of press release here. Their shill paper called World Oil. They're telling President Biden to prioritize unlocking U.S. energy resources. So this is the drill baby drill kind of stuff on a shill baby shill type of website here, like oil. So I keep going, and I find out the owner of this website, right? So I thought this website was a little sketchy. So I was like, all right, so who is Gulf Publishing Company, right? The developer of this website. Go over here. Oh, look, they sell pipelines. They have a pipeline magazine, underground construction magazine for pipelines, marketing surveys, hydrocarbon processing, pipeline gas and journal. These guys are hyped on the pipes, dude. Seriously, they got magazines. Imagine if you like sitting around taking a deuce, and all you read is like American pipeline news. Like, that's your deal. All right. So that's the guys that made the website that he is being referenced under the press release of the A.P.I., the head of the A.P.I. being Mike Sommers. All right, let's keep going. We went over the petroleum refinery. So then I started looking into what, oil refineries shut down. I'm going to start getting a little bit of background and history on why oil refineries are shutting down. Let's see here. And what I was able to find here is Leondell Basel to shut down Houston oil refinery by the end of 2023. Oh, dear God, didn't you just hear Mike Sommers? He just said we need these plants. We need them really quick. Like, why would you be shutting it down? Let's take a look, because he's actually on video, and the first thing he says in this video is exactly why he's selling his refinery. And wouldn't it be so convenient to say there's some sort of supply and demand chain crunch, create a narrative under why we're going to need more oil refineries in the future, right? And a bunch of oil refineries are shutting down because it will cost too much for them to refine at a proper margin for them to make their margins. And here is the CEO of the Leondell Basel Houston refinery plant that's being shut down in 2023, and this is his quote for exactly why he's shutting it down.
Well, now might be a really good time to sell something when it's most valuable.
A Houston oil refinery, one of the largest in the country, is closing down. The 700-acre Pasadena plant is able to refine more than 250,000 barrels of oil per day, turning crude into transportation fuels like gas and diesel. The refinery is owned by Lobbyists based out where there's a big push to turn toward more clean energy. Energy experts believe the company also capitalizing on the timing. Russia's invasion has caused oil prices to skyrocket, making it a good time to sell the refinery.
Boom. He just said it. Did you guys hear that? Okay, so I was really curious about this. Like, why is it that refineries, you'd think they'd be doing better with higher prices, but it's not the case. So U.S. oil refiners' margins smash records, but few plan to build more plants. And now as you get into this, what you learn is that the closer that the WTI crude gets to Brent crude, the bigger problem it is for refiners to actually make their profit margins due to the additional cost of being landlocked as a refinery, whereas Brent crude is right attached to a port at the sea. And so there are additional costs in order to get WTI crude out onto a tanker and to export it. And so what that means is higher oil prices actually mean refineries make less money. And I'll put the link in the show notes for you for this. So why are so many oil refineries closing? The industrial landscape of oil refineries has been challenging as of late, with the COVID pandemic triggering a massive slump in demand for oil, which resulted in many refineries across the world having to temporarily shut down. Okay, so this is what's happening. Finding a capacity dip caused by pandemic cuts across operators, an infrastructure as fragile as any other given the right circumstances. Pre-pandemic predictions of a downturn coming before we even had the pandemic, pivoting and repurposing with renewables front and center. Greening of infrastructure starts with a cleanup. They have to clean up these old beat-up refineries. This is the story, people. This is the dynamic story of economic battle that we're having between an old fossil fuel that's running out, that only has probably 40 years left of economically viable, recoverable resource left in it before we use it all up. And we have to figure out shifts, not because we're a bunch of tree-hugging, lollipop-licking hippie, what do they call them, snowflakes. It's not sustainable. Use your brain. Finite resources being used in infinite ways is not sustainable. So we have to find alternatives. Think about it. Think about it. Okay, so I did some more research about different refineries. Started realizing there was also things like that a refinery blast could push gas prices above 4. This happened in 2021, about 6 months ago. And that they were predicted not to get back online for 3 or 4 months, and still they're not back up on production. So that happened. He didn't mention anything about that. He didn't mention anything about safety there. He mentioned Biden. Biden's attacking. Oh, it wasn't. So Biden went and blew up this Texas refinery. And trust me, I don't like Biden that much. But, you know, let's keep the narrative to this. Let's use our non-minds for a change here. All right, moving on. Another one, completely different. A Citgo Corpus Christi shutters part of its sulfur recovery because of lack of oxygen. Okay, that's why that one was shut down. This must be part of the 3/4 that he didn't mention. Going oxygen shortage for Texas oil refinery tail. This is the Citgo Corpus Christi. That's the same one. And then we went into the oil refinery. So the last thing I just noticed here was just I found some documents really kind of breaking all of our oil seeds for market and trade, and I'll include a link to this PDF in the notes if you are interested. Okay, so as you can see, one little article, one little news report. All right, so as you can see, one little news report on CNBC or Fox Business, and we can go on a rabbit hole dive into the people that pluck the harp of the strings that control the narrative of the mainstream media. And look at their smiling faces, aren't they cute? Shilling as they shill. All right, so I'm going to work on my format for this, my people. I'm going to do more of these. I'm going to make them clearer, more concise, but we are going to take rabbit hole deep dives into these topics. It's not meant to get political. It's meant to get about who's influencing our narratives. Now, the one thing I'd like to be able to also do is to have a narrative takeaway of how are we going to make money from this, right? So I'm not going to waste your time just talking about which shill and which narratives, who's telling the truth, who's lying. Let's figure out how we're going to make money on this. So right now we can see that they're shilling about how we need more refineries. Then we got a bunch of people that are selling refineries. So that's going to be a lot more U.S. refining of oil. So that means that foreign investment in oil refinery is going to be going up. And that will be probably on the 2-year scale, 1 to 2 year type of scale. So don't rush into it too much. On the short term, you can definitely see that this is a trigger that gas prices are going to continue going up. This is a strong sign. If the shills are out chilling, just sell at the top. Let's see it again. Why is he selling his oil refinery? Is it because of Biden's tax, or is it because can't argue with people? All right, more to come.